Good afternoon, everyone. It is a very important day today in J Street land. February 4th is a national holiday for J Streeters. Happy birthday to my colleague, Elon Goldenberg. What better birthday present than to be here with me instead of with your family, right?
This is nothing else I'd want to do on my birthday, but thank you, Jeremy. This has been, actually, it's already been a great birthday. It's like fun to be here. We got good family news at home with my kids. We don't have to get all into that.
We don't have to get into that, but congratulations to the kids.
And, went to a basketball game last night, watched the Knicks destroy the Wizards. It's great.
Right, well, that's not news.
That's just a routine.
Routine. The Knicks destroying the Wizards is not news. But anyhow, well, welcome everybody back to Word on the Street Live. It's Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and we are here every week and really glad to be with you. And this week in particular, we thought it was a really important time to take a look at some of the domestic issues that J Street members and our family of supporters and activists and clergy are so deeply engaged in, because while we are a pro-Israel, pro-peace organization, we are also pro-democracy, and we stand up on issues related to the health of Israeli democracy and American democracy. And we'll be getting into the piece that Elon actually just wrote about the sort of interrelated challenges that both countries have right now. But we're here today to talk a little bit about the emergency gathering of clergy that took place this week in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the Twin Cities in response to not just the terrible killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, but really to the entire situation of ICE and the federal government descending on the city in the way that it has, in just an unprecedented challenge to the democratic foundations of our country. And in response to that, 650 clergy and faith leaders gathered together in a we're going to discuss in an action that was brought together and helped organized by rabbis in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. We're joined by one of those rabbis who is very involved in the local community, Rabbi Tamar Magill-Grimm, and we're joined as well by the co-chair of J Street's Rabbinic and Clergy Cabinet, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum from New York, who flew in to be part of this event. Rabbi Kleinbaum is the Rabbi Emerita now of Congregation Beit Simchat Torah in New York City. As all of you know, I think many of you are familiar with Sharon and the dedication that she has had over the course of her life and career to promoting social justice, LGBTQ plus rights, human rights, progressive values. And it's just an honor always to be with you, Sharon. And Rabbi Tamar Magill-Grimm is the senior rabbi at Temple Beth Jacob, the Beth Jacob congregation. It's a conservative synagogue in the Mendota Heights neighborhood. This egalitarian synagogue has about 350 family members. So it's great to be with both of you. Elon, why don't you get started?
Yeah, really great to be with both of you. And unfortunately, under these circumstances, Mar, we want to first turn to you because, this is your community where all this is happening. And just hear from you, how are you feeling right now? And also just a bit of a description of what you are seeing and feeling in your community at the moment.
It's been a really challenging time. It's to see my neighbors afraid to leave their homes. My children go to a public school where about at least a third, maybe 2/3 of the students are, Spanish speaking. And right now the school's feeding. We have a whole grocery delivery system. People are afraid to go to work. People are afraid to go to the grocery store. So we have a whole system of delivering groceries and diapers and formula. And teachers are riding the buses with the students to make sure they get safely to their homes. Other faculty from the school are, standing at the bus stops waiting. It's many of the restaurants in my neighborhood are either closed or you have to call. You go up to the door and you call a phone number to get access because they're afraid to come to the door. It's you've seen on the news, I'm sure, people who are trying to observe, just trying to protest in a peaceful way, are being detained. Citizens are being detained. It's horrific. It's horrific. It's a nightmare.
And has there been any, at least it felt, at least in terms of the public image that the administration is trying to show, some walk back over the last few days, or at least, that's the image they're trying to project. At least it feels like. Has that actually been felt on the ground at all?
So we haven't felt it yet. Homan announced this morning, you probably saw, that there would be a drawdown of 700 ICE officers. There still will be 2,300 here.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe tell a story? I think maybe give people a personal story of one of the families that you know or that you have heard about, just to give us a more personal flavor of this from one family's point of view?
Or yeah, so we have a member of our congregation who owns property, rents that property out to a family. That family does not feel safe leaving their home now. And so we have been helping to cover their rent. And they actually it's really a beautiful thing they're doing is to try to fill in that income gap there. They're making tamales and selling them. So we, one thing I want to say, so we have signal groups, and I want to thank Rabbi Kleinbaum so much for a year ago said, I heard about the signal groups that you set up in New York, and we set up a similar kind of network here for our shul, but we did it based on rather than location, we did it based on issues. So we have an immigration group, we have a protecting democracy group, we have a healthcare rights group, an LGBTQ plus rights group, and so on. Our immigration group has been very, very active. And so this family, they're making tamales, and people can order tamales through Venmo. And so we're not just, giving tzedakah, helping them in that way, but actually trying to help them have a livelihood too. And it's a sweet connection that tamales are abundant.
That's a great anecdote. Thank you for sharing that. And tell us a little bit about how, from what you know, I know that you weren't one of the people that actually initially issued the call to action for clergy, but can you tell us a little bit about where that idea came from and what inspired it and how that came to be?
Yeah, so the organization called MARCH, it's an acronym that stands for Multi-Faith, Anti-Racist Change and Healing, organized this gathering and sent out the call. It was a gathering on Thursday, the 22nd of January, followed by a day of action on January 23rd. And the idea was that for it not to be a one-time event, but an initial act of collective responsibility rooted in relationship, spiritual grounding, and commitment to communities facing heightened harm and scrutiny in this moment. And so Thursday was really an amazing day of seeing these 650 clergy from all over the country gathered in a church in downtown Minneapolis together, singing together, training, learning together, and volunteering together, going out on the streets together. It was really, really powerful.
And Sharon, you were one of the 650 clergy who showed up for this really important event and send this message. So maybe tell us a little bit about that experience and also just why you decided to go.
Yeah, and I'm so moved and happy to be here. And I have to just echo what Tamar is describing. It is impossible to understand what it's like to be on the streets there without being there. And having been there, my heart just goes out to my colleagues like Tamar and the human beings who are trying to live a life there, and everybody is affected. I stayed with my nephew and niece and their kids. I mean, just try to explain to a 4-year-old what's happening when you take your kid to daycare and you watch these massive groups of armed militia. Even if you're completely uninvolved that moment in an anti-ICE action, because you're living your life as a young parent with young kids, and watching my 4-year-old great nephew, just trying to understand what's going on. So just the level of horror, it's being in a dystopian nightmare that there are not even enough words for it. And I'm a person of a lot of words. So the irony is, the week before, I was leading a civil rights trip for family and friends to Atlanta, Selma, Birmingham, and Memphis. And while I had just taught all about King's letter after Bloody Sunday to invite clergy to Selma for what would be the third march in Selma after Bloody Sunday, and his words are so moving, and basically he understands he needs to have interfaith clergy from all over the country walking. And I get an email right after I taught that I get an email from March, the organization that Tamar mentions, which quotes the King words of invitation to clergy today, saying the moment has arrived where we need outsiders here. We need clergy. We need a vast display of moral and spiritual support. So, of course, there was no way I could say no. And being emerita has its great advantages, which is I don't have to be at shul every Shabbos, so I could arrange this. And it felt like that was my moral obligation. So that was the weekend of King weekend. So this was, as Tamar said, the 22nd and 23rd. And they are so well organized and so thoughtful. And they threw this together with 6 days. I mean, just think about that, with people coming in from all over the country, all different denominations, with all different kinds of needs, to enter into the church in which we were gathering. And nobody could come just to participate on Friday, but had to be there for the Thursday day of preparation. And somebody who's very involved in Gandhi and nonviolence for my entire life, the idea that there would be an organization which would say, no, you can't just act, you have to think before, plan, prepare. It's exactly my orientation deeply. So I very much appreciated that. And people were upset and hurt. And they said, no, they were very good on their limits. And when we entered the church, this is also a testimony to people from Minnesota. There were mountains of coats, of long underwear, of hats, of gloves, of socks, of boots that people from the Twin Cities donated for the weekend to clergy coming in from all over who were not so well prepared for the weather. And every table was well organized, divided into sizes. So the long underwear table had every different size. Everything was divided. That level of care and thoughtfulness speaks a lot to the people of Minnesota and their ability to respond from such a place. So we had a full day of preparation and planning on Thursday, very inspiring and moving, and a lot of rabbis, how shall we say? The rabbis responded a quite fulsome way. And then starting Sunday morning, and also there was an unheard of level of, how shall we say, very cold temperatures. Even for Minnesota, it was cold. It was minus 21 degrees on that Friday. So they devised different actions for people to choose to take part in. Some were indoors and some were outdoors, because obviously for some people, it's very dangerous. Starting with a interfaith service on Friday morning with the bishop who spoke so profoundly to Trump. She gave the sermon, and it was very, very moving. And then there were different actions that people could take. All of us participated in Ice Watch, going into the neighborhoods in which this is at a heightened level. And then there were different actions. There was an action at the airport to protest the deportations and the airplanes supporting that. And they asked very clearly that only clergy from Minnesota do the action that would risk arrest, that their legal support team was stretched so thin that they didn't want to deal with the issues of out-of-state people. So their clarity was very helpful. And the one other thing I want to say that we have a lot to learn from is the role that music plays and played with the group that's really evolving as we speak. And it's tremendous as an action to teach 1,600 people sitting in a church songs of love and of light and of protest, including songs beseeching ICE agents to leave that line of work and find something out. And then 1,600 people walking in the streets of Minneapolis singing together. The contrast, the image, the power was so profound, really, really profound. And so I participated in the Target action. We had a clergy flash mob, we called it informally. They had all of us descend on the local cart. Target is a Minnesota brand. It is deep in the culture of Minnesota in a way that I did not appreciate, that everybody sees it as their local store, their grandparents raised kids. It's so that Target has been so accommodating of ICE is an issue that really speaks to the power that this federal government has to reach into something so deep in a Minnesotan's soul. So they're asking for a boycott of Target, and they're asking Target to be a good neighbor and not participate and support and help and coordinate with. So we did it. We spread out into the store so that we wouldn't be seen as a group, which, let's just say, all these New York rabbis and California, it was a little obvious. And then when the singers started singing, we all gathered in the atrium. Hundreds and hundreds of people gathered, and about 5 of us spoke about from a religious point of view, and it was real, and sang and spoke. And then we went to the rally that took place. They moved the rally indoors because of the minus 21 degree temperature. But still, with minus 21 degrees, 50,000 people walked on the streets of Minneapolis from the kickoff point to the rally.
And Tamar, maybe you can tell us, you were also participated. Were you in a different action, or were you also, I'm improvising, so maybe you were also at the Target action, but if you were doing something else, I'd be interested to hear about your experiences too.
So I was at the march on Friday afternoon. Here's the irony. So my children, their school was closed on Friday because of the cold. So I couldn't go to anything in the morning.
Yeah.
I had coverage for the afternoon. But it was so cold. And I just want to say, it was the coats and the long underwear and all of that, like that was like the least we could do, because we were so moved. We were so moved that people came from all over the country to be with us, to support us, to march with us. It was incredible to see that kind of support in such a short period of time. People bought plane tickets at the last minute, must have been exorbitantly expensive. Just the care and showing up meant the world to us.
Yeah, and you should know, I mean, I was listening to Jacob Fry in an interview the other day. He was also talking about, I showed up in Washington and realized, wow, this is much bigger. It felt much bigger than it feels when you're just in it in your own community. So hopefully you are feeling that, just convey from J Street and from us and just from so many that people are watching this very, very closely, and that it really does have the national attention. I mean, it's dominating.
And we all got to see Sharon on CNN.
There's what I found, there were so many pieces of it that were really deeply, deeply moving. The power of showing up really matters, but also figuring out how showing up doesn't burden the people who need to be supported. And that's something, that delicate balance of doing it in a way that's actually helpful and not another pain point. So I could be there, my kids are grown adults. So that some of us could go to an interfaith service, but other people had to take care of their kids. There was such a deep sense of, what I keep saying in general, which is no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And that motto really works on the ground in the Twin Cities. Everybody's doing what they can do, understanding they can't do everything. And if you have little kids at home, what you can do is going to be different than if your kids, or you don't have kids, or they're not at home. You know what I mean? There's a real sense of, okay, what can you do? You can crochet hats, or you can deliver food. By the way, we have a network here of folks in Minnesota too. The delivery of food has not become easy either. We now have had sightings of ICE following people who are carrying grocery bags to neighborhoods that are not their own. Can you imagine that?
You have
As
to
a
be
way to
very careful. Yeah. And
go ahead, Tamar. You could speak about that.
we've been doing a lot of food delivery, and you want to not deliver to the same people over and over again. You want to make sure that if you're delivering, you're not delivering in a car that's also been involved in the observing of ICE. Yeah, it's also, there's risk involved in this activity.
And to think, I mean, this is 2026 America.
Yep.
It is outrageous. It is inconceivable that we are having conversations like this about this country at this point in our lives and our history.
Totally right.
So, it is on all of us to do everything that we can in order to be part of the resistance that brings about the change that we need. And I am personally just really glad to see Jewish clergy in the center of this. And I wanted to take us in the direction, as you are both rabbis, and this is an organization with its roots in Jewish values. I did want to ask you if you could offer us a little bit of Torah here. If you could offer us a little bit of the Jewish roots of the ethics and the values that we as a community need to be bringing into this. Maybe Sharon and then Tamar.
Happy to. I've been thinking a lot about this, of course. And I would say, first of all, since Tu B'Shvat was this week, I've really been thinking a lot about one of the profound teachings of this holiday of the trees when the ground is so frozen, is that we look at the frozen ground, which is inconceivable that life exists, but we know that the roots down below are alive and being nourished, and they're doing their thing in the frozen winter. And Tu B'Shvat reminds us every year. This year, it's been particularly emphatically a point that spring does come. The trees do emerge into the greenery that's impossible to imagine, and that's a source of deep faith for me, that you can't just look at the empirical reality of the world around us. We have to be able to remember, if it's in our memory, or imagine, if we don't have it in our memory, the possibilities of a world that looks very different than where we are right now. And trees teach us that all the time. Heschel said in 1944 in an essay, he got out of Europe right before the war, but couldn't get a visa for his mother or sisters. He got a scholar's visa and he actually taught at HUC for the course of the war before he moved to JTS. And in 1944, when he did not even know what was happening with his mother or sisters, and they ended up being murdered, he wrote an incredible essay about what are the values we have to have right now. And he ends the essay by saying, how good do we have to be? There's one metric we have about how good and how do we respond to this. We have to be to the degree good that fascists are evil. And imagine writing that in 1944. So that remains for me deep Torah about, okay, how good do we have to be? How committed do we have to be? How much do we have to do? Well, what fascism is doing, the evil to which fascism is going, which is very deep and wide and big, we have to do that. And I saw in Minnesota both the horror and the terror, but I also saw this incredible humanity of the people of Minnesota that I'm not sure. I'd like to think that will happen in New York if we're put in this position. But it is so incredible. We have so much to learn, not just from the fascists in Minnesota, but from the good people who are working against terrible odds in a horrifying, fear-inducing environment to keep on planting trees, to keep on insisting on the goodness of people. It's a miracle to me, honestly.
Tamar, I'm curious your perspective on this and what you say to your community and to your congregants about the Jewish lessons, right, and the Jewish imperatives that we have out of our morals and our ethics and teachings.
Yeah, there are three things that have kind of been that I've been holding on to that have been helping me through this time, and that's what I share with my congregation. What's helpful, the texts that are helpful to me are often helpful to them. The first is the most obvious. 36 times in the Torah, it says, do not oppress the stranger, love the stranger, and the heart of the stranger. It's all in there, right? And that's kind of the most obvious go-to for where our moral obligation in this moment comes from. But in addition to that, I've been holding on to two other things that I think take it a little bit further. So one is this idea that a year ago when we started this project, which we called Beth Jacob Congregation Doing Tzedek, I didn't know until yesterday we were going to be on together. So this is sweet for me to be able to share this with you, Sharon, that, you framed the project you were doing with B'makom she'en anashim hishtadel liot ish, in the place where there's no humanity, strive to be a human. And I never thought my city would be the place that I'd be looking around and saying, this is a place where there's no humanity. And there is, like you said, so much humanity, actually. So many people stepping forward and saying, we are going to be the humanity in this place. And one of the things that you notice if you drive around the Twin Cities, you see, yes, you do see ICE for sure. You also see people carrying boxes from their cars. You can see on the streets the humanity as well. So that has just, again, been so profoundly moving to me, to see the people who say, like, the makom she'en anashim, I will be the humanity here. The second piece is, I actually went to New York this weekend, and I just want to say that my kids and I were schlepping around on the subway with all our luggage, which is not always easy. And there was a woman in the subway who opened the gate for us and moved my luggage through. So I do think New Yorkers,
even in New York.
Yes.
yeah. No, not even. I like New Yorkers, but anyway. The second thing is just this argument I've had with some people about rights and who had, what not just human, legal rights, what legal rights people have. And I realize that from a Jewish perspective, it's just not that simple. We care beyond just what rights a person has. It's when the person who wanted to convert to Judaism came up to Shammai and said, teach me the whole Torah while standing on one foot, and Shammai hits him with a stick. I mean, it's oh my gosh. And then he goes to Hillel, and Hillel says, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor, right? And that comparison, they're here you have Shammai who's hitting people with sticks, and you have Hillel who's no, the Torah is about how we treat each other. It's not just, do you have a right? Are you a full-fledged member of our community? And do we consider you worthy enough? It's we go beyond that. It's that which is hateful to you, do not do to another person. We have a moral obligation to treat other people with respect and dignity, and its core. That's the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn.
Well, I am not an expert on the Torah, but I do know that value is the core of my Judaism. And it's, if there's one thing that I've always instilled in my kids and that was instilled in me by my father, it's that concept, because we learn. I am more of a student of history, and we learn from our history. And the idea that the Jewish people, of all people, who have suffered all of these things over the course of our history in every regime, we have to learn these lessons, and we have to be at the forefront of carrying that moral torch and ensuring that we are standing up for the other, and standing up in our own communities when our communities are treating other people this way. I personally thought that when Tim Walz raised the comparison in his mind, and he's somebody who I think he did his doctoral dissertation on Holocaust education, if I'm not mistaken, and he raised the similarity to the story of Anne Frank hiding during all of the, those years in Amsterdam, and to the little kids who are now being forced to hide in their apartments for days and weeks and months on end. I personally found that to be an apt analogy. And I know that he's taken some heat and there's been some backlash to him, but I'm curious, like, how did that strike you? Did that resonate at all with you? I found some resonance there.
Tamar, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I know that there were some people who were really upset by it, but it felt resonant to me. It's what I'm seeing happen. Some of my kids' friends aren't coming to school. they're hiding. I mean,
Appearing.
Yeah, we've had, there's a suburb here, Columbia Heights. I think they've had 5 or 6 students detained, kids detained.
Yeah. I would also say, as a student of history, and I share that love of history, that our Jewish community in America tends to be extremely narrow about understanding or thinking about our history as Jews. And one of the arguments that you'll hear is, well, we came here legally. They are not here legally. And of course, before 1924, there was no such thing as legal versus illegal immigration to America. There was the Chinese Exclusion Act, so Chinese couldn't come in. But from Europe, nobody was excluded except if you were a criminal or had health concerns. That's why Ellis Island was such a fraught place, because they did a medical check. And if they found you not to be healthy or have a contagious disease, boop, you went back to Europe. But there was no sense of a limitation. That's why so many Jews got to America between 1881 and 1924. Most American Jews are descendant, about 95%, from Jews who made it here before 1924. In 1924, the immigration laws were passed, which were entirely defined as targeting Eastern Europeans and Southern Europeans, Jews and Italians. The Congress wanted to keep Jews and Italians out because there was a tremendous level of anti-Semitism and a fear that Jews and Italians were bringing in left-wing and labor and Bolshevik propaganda. So starting in 1924, the gates basically closed for Eastern European Jews to get into America, and that law was not changed until the 1950s. So had that law not existed, we always talk about the heinous genocidal crimes of the Hitler regime, but America did not have our gates open, and it was because of those laws in 1924 before 1924, all Jews came here without any paperwork. Most Jews, had they had to go through what most immigrants have to go through now, would never have gotten in. So that's a piece of history that our community doesn't, not all of us, but some people. And same thing with how discrimination happens. And honestly, we're going to have to face another piece, which I think we're less comfortable talking about, which is, at what point do we do what we have demanded of the righteous Gentiles, actually put ourselves at serious risk by harboring, by breaking the laws that will prevent it from us from interfering with ICE or with the care and feeding of targets of ICE's actions? That's going to be our next question.
Yeah, and I just want to thank both of you again, because for me, the analogy that Walls drew, like, initially, I kind of questioned it a little bit in terms of both directions. But the more I've heard, actually, really starting last week, we had Daniel Biss on, who's running for Congress, but also mayor in Evanston, who is dealing with this, and he was describing some very similar kind of dynamics, Tamara, that you're describing, keeping kids hidden, keeping kids, sheltered on Halloween, and trying to explain to first graders why you can't go outside on Halloween, things like that. And if that doesn't echo to Anne Frank and just that kind of experience, I just don't know what does. And it's really important, because even compared to hearing it on the news, and we see these very individual key stories on the news that help personalize it and bring it home, but just hearing you talk about it, for me, just makes it all that much more real.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit, but before we do, I just want to take a quick break and remind our viewers that these are the kinds of issues and thoughtful and provocative discussions and challenges of the moment that we're going to be addressing at the J Street National Convention, which runs from February 28th to May 3rd. We really hope to see many.
March 3rd, not May 3rd.
I said May. It's going to be a very
long,
very long convention.
I think you got to check with the staff on that. I think
yeah.
I think we're gonna have some problems at Jason.
All right, so maybe we'll shorten it a little bit, and we'll run it from February 28th only to March 3rd instead. And so we hope that people will join us. And I know, Sharon, you'll be there tomorrow. Maybe we can count on you. I hope perhaps you'll consider coming. But we'd love to see many of our regular watchers and listeners there. There's a little 20% discount available for folks who register using the Word on the Street code. And we're going to be broadcasting from the hall. We're going to be doing a whole series of talks and interviews and conversations during the day and carrying Word on the Street live into the halls of the convention. So I'm looking forward to that. If you enjoy these conversations, please do hit the heart button now, and that helps us get up the algorithm on Substack and get more people to see what we're doing. So let me turn it over to Elon for a little shift in the conversation.
Yeah, and I want to take us, one of J Street, as we talked about, pro-democracy, but pro-Israel and pro-peace are also so central to the conversation. And I want to tell you a little bit about at least an experience I had earlier this week, and then also get your reactions, Sharon and Tamar, as you think about these issues, which was one of the things we've done. We've been out there very publicly criticizing what the administration is doing on ICE. We've also drawn some analogies in our writing, in our social media, to some of the things happening in the West Bank, particularly around settler violence and systemic kind of enablement by the Israeli government of that violence. IDF, not necessarily the same as ICE, because it's not the IDF in many cases doing it. In many cases, it's the IDF escorting Jews. And then when Jews commit these activities and Palestinians defend themselves, in comes the IDF to defend the Jews who started the entire thing and are there to vandalize, terrorize, and ultimately displace, right? I mean, I think that theory of displacement is very similar. But when I put this out there and we started putting this out there, we definitely started getting some feedback from people I know, care about in the Jewish community, who I deeply respect. We're very opposed to what ICE is doing, recognize some of the challenges associated with settler violence, still very uncomfortable with this analogy. Felt it goes too far, felt that it's maybe a broader symptom of a lot of liberal Jews who have traditionally grown up with very liberal Jewish values and approach to the United States and to American politics. But it's harder to see it when it's happening in Israel, and maybe it's more personal. And so I'm interested to get your takes on this and what we are seeing here, if the analogy is fair, and how you see what is happening in the West Bank and in Gaza, as compared, as kind of put on top of what is happening in our own country. So maybe Sharon will go to you first.
Yeah, I think people get very anxious about analogies because they imagine it means we're trying to say everything's exactly the same. Same thing with the Anne Frank. Of course, there are some differences. And just because we look at history to help understand our present moment doesn't mean we think everything is exactly the same. However, I think there are some important similarities now. And I agree that the lawlessness, the sense that a Palestinian on the West Bank feels like there's no protection from a government which would protect human beings from lawless thugs, feels very similar. In the case, there are obviously differences that ICE is actually the government, but let's be honest, Ruth Ben-Ghiat is brilliant at this in studying all different strongmen. There are usually some source of thugs, whether they're the brown shirts or they're different thugs, for which sometimes the authoritarian or the wannabe authoritarian has some distance, but they're carrying out the ultimate goal of that authoritarian. So it is not enough to say these are just a few crazy kids from some hilltop settlements. And it's true that it's not the majority of settlers doing this level of violence. But it is absolutely true that the similarity exists, that the government does not stop, does not protect, does not see that the human being who are residents, they're not even citizens, who are residents of the West Bank deserve to be protected. And the other thing that's very similar is that the hope there'll be some kind of self-deportation. That's part of Trump's plan, is that people will see the cruelty, they will see their children being taken away, and they will themselves take his self-deportation offer. And I think that's what is going on in Israel. There are those that really support ethnic cleansing in the West Bank and in Gaza, and to have behaviors by these actors without any limitation by the IDF is absolutely outrageous. And I think there are some similarities that are worth looking at, and absolutely correct. So I think I read your piece, Elon, completely agree with you. And I think part of the problem is that most American Jews have not been to the West Bank. Most American Jews have not seen the system in which there can be a very wealthy Jewish town next to a town without a Palestinian town that barely has water or resources, and have seen the checkpoints. So for most American Jews, it sounds like an exaggeration. A little bit like it's hard to explain what's going on in Minneapolis. It's very hard to get people to see how horrible, that Palestinians have to have nets above their marketplace in Hebron, which is still an active marketplace, because Jews throw down washing machines and now throw down toxic materials. We imagine we Jews are going to do something better or differently. And it's hard for American Jews to accept that this is being done in our name and by the Israeli government. And I say that as a progressive Zionist. But I think if we can't call it out, there will be no hope there.
Tamar, I don't know if you wanted to jump in as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I agree with everything you said. And I think the power differential, another similarity that I see is like people who just want to live their lives, who want to live on their property, on their land, and don't have guns, right? And then people coming in with guns and terrorizing them. You can't not see the similarity there. And we have someone in our congregation who is very, very good friends with, very close with, felt like family with Auda, who was murdered on the West Bank. What was that, 6 months ago at this point? And our community really felt that. And I think even though it was, geographically far away, it was close in our hearts. And she shared a lot about his life and his family and what they've experienced. And so I think there's a similar feeling of like, they had a community, they had, their houses had bulldozers come to it multiple times. They're just trying to live their lives. And, he's a father, and just the pain that we felt when he was murdered, to see that happening in your own community.
Yeah. And Auda is that analogy for me, like really rings true. And I wrote about this, which is, there's video of him taking video with Yunon Levy, taking a guy who we had sanctioned during the Biden administration, the Trump administration removed those sanctions, Levy shooting him. And
he's not some hilltop youth, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
this is
no,
not
exactly.
Some, unreformed kid.
Or an unknown person.
Yeah, I mean, he runs he runs a big company.
Yep.
He's got these farms, these illegal farms that get set up, and then mysteriously water, electricity built within days, roads are being paved to them. These things don't happen with the assistance of the state. I will say one other thing about this, and then we should move on to one other thing we really wanted to get to, but which was what the interesting reaction was, and it goes to that dynamic of the discomfort of in your own society, and this happening to you. Is I also shared this piece with some Israeli colleagues and friends who are really on the forefront of leading the fight against settler violence in Israel. And their response was actually the opposite of what I heard of some American Jews, which is, what's happening here is worse.
Uh-huh.
and it's uncomfortable to me,
Yeah.
and so I do think that there is this dynamic of seeing it in your own home and just being so completely horrified
Yeah.
by that and so disappointed, and almost in a way that's even more challenging than seeing it abroad.
So one place where I wanted to begin to wrap up the conversation with you guys is it is very inspiring to all of us as Jewish Americans to see rabbis at the center of this, right? And to see you leading this charge and to being that moral voice and representing the best of our values and our people. On an individual level, I've seen clergy answering the call. I've seen individual Jewish leaders doing what needs to be done, as you said, in this moment. I'm curious your take on sort of the establishment of the American Jewish community. And are we seeing the response that is needed from the loudest voices and the most powerful institutions in our community, even as you all are on the front lines? I'm curious your perspective on whether the silence is a little bit deafening right now.
I think our local Jewish community came together. So first of all, the Minnesota Rabbinical Association put out a statement. I don't know if you
Yes.
seen it, which I signed, of course. And then the sort of like the major Jewish institutions, organizations in the Twin Cities came together with a statement that did not, in my opinion, speak out strongly enough against what is happening. Our synagogue signed on to it. We're a community player, we're a team player, and it did speak to what's going on, but I had wished the language would have been stronger. When you say is the silence deafening, I mean, I'm more interested in the corporations, particularly Target, as Sharon mentioned, speaking out. I think they have influence, they have power, and I'd like to. There, the silence really feels deafening. Seeing my colleagues, the other rabbis in Minnesota, Rabbi Emma Kipley-Ogman, who was arrested at the airport, Rabbi Aaron Weininger, Rabbi Ariella Koch-Rosenberg, of course, who's very involved in organizing the gathering. I'm sure I'm missing people, so I feel bad, but like seeing those people really step forward. We've had press conferences, we've had other speaking engagements, we've had other actions at various corporations, and so I think I'm proud of what the individual clergy are doing, and to me, it's the corporations where the silence is deafening.
I'm horrified at the silence of those major Jewish organizations. Although I have to say, in 32 years of being a congregational rabbi at CBSC, and Tamar, I don't know if you have this experience. I don't know if I could count on one hand the people who knew who was the CEO of the Conference of Presidents, or what the Conference of Presidents was. I mean, maybe, I'm not even sure I could even count more than one or two people who ever knew that. I mean, the gap between those organizations and Jewish life on the ground is just enormous. And I think we have a bigger problem, which is that the leadership of much of those organizations are so tied in to the corporations that Tamar is talking about, to wanting to make good with business, that they're not really thinking about how to actively engage on this. And that's, we have a strata of our community that's become part of the oligarchy of American life, and their concern about stepping out or being visible, it's palpable. I mean, the only corporate leader that's even had a little murmur, and correct me if I'm wrong, is Jamie Dimon. He's kind of said a very tiny little, well, maybe this has gone too far, but that's the only one that I know of. And that's not a Jewish community leader, but he's a corporate leader. I'm horrified, but I'm not surprised. That's the sad part.
Well, it is definitely the mission and the role of J Street to demonstrate that there is a broad constituency in the American Jewish community that is horrified and is outraged.
And I do believe that's true. And I think that's different than that's what I'm saying. I think most Jews don't even know who those people are in an organized way.
So this is the work, and we will continue at it, and we will make sure that the voices of clergy are at the center, because you are able to translate that legacy of learning and the morals and the ethics that date back to Hillel's very, very simple concept about how you treat other people.
But I do think that what Tamar is saying is really important, and I think the Jewish community could have a very important role, which is to analyze the boards of all these corporations, to look for the Jewish members of those boards, to reach out to them, and those you have to be peer-to-peer. You have to have a board, a corporate strategy. The Jewish community could play a very, very productive role in really, there are a few corporations that are being looked at by the Minnesota folks, and Target is one of them, but to really start doing a corporate analysis, where are the Jews, who are they? And I think that could be a very effective role that our community could play.
Absolutely. Any final words, Tamar and Sharon? We just want to make sure you have a last second here before we sign off. Tamar?
I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, for inviting us, and for holding us in your hearts.
Thank you.
And Tamar, remember what I said, that, ask and there we will come, and that the key is to figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm or hurt or undermine. But just know that we're here, we're ready to show up. And the invitation, if it's sent to us, will have impact. Oh, this is a fantastic, marchminnesota.org has a great list of ways to support mutual aid as well as legal aid and all different kinds of organizations there.
Well, thank you both for everything that you both do to carry forward.
Well, thank you.
And thank you. And we're thinking of you, and we're really thinking of your community, Tamar.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next
week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Washington, February 28th.